Welcome to the Golden Gems podcast. Today we're taking a deep dive into Bill Hicks, the uncompromising comedian who dismantled the American machine and was silenced by it while he was dying.
Yeah, and I mean, if you really want to understand the stakes of this conversation, you kind of have to picture this incredibly grim scenario. It's the fall of 1993.
Right.
You've got this 31-year-old man who has just been handed a terminal pancreatic cancer diagnosis.
Which is just devastating at that age.
Unthinkable.
Yeah.
And on Mondays, he is hooked up to a chemotherapy, the V, at MD Anderson in Houston. But then on Thursdays, he is pulling himself up onto a comedy club stage. He's physically deteriorating, but he's using his absolute final breaths to systematically deconstruct the American dream.
He wasn't even really telling jokes at that point, was he?
No, I mean, he was delivering a psychedelic gospel to a culture that he truly believed was sleepwalking toward its own destruction.
And the most tragic yet defining part of that whole image is what happens next. When he finally gets the chance to deliver that gospel to a national television audience, on late-night TV, the network just quietly erases the tape to protect their advertisers. They silenced a dying man to protect commercial revenue.
Which is just wild to think about now.
Exactly. So look, we aren't doing a retrospective on a 90s stand-up comic today. We are conducting a forensic audit of a philosophical prophet. We need to trace the genealogy of his rebellion, figure out exactly how he weaponized comedy, and confront the really uncomfortable reality of how the modern world has commodified his legacy.
Right, and to understand how he developed that weapon, you have to look at the architecture of his early life, because the American suburbs have this incredible tendency to manufacture their own strongest critics.
Oh, absolutely.
He was born in 1961 in Valdosta, Georgia, but by the time he was 7, the family had moved to Spring Branch.
Which is a very specific type of place.
Very specific. It was a highly manicured, wealthy suburb of Houston. You have his father, Jim, who was a regional executive for General Motors, and his mother, Mary, who enforces strict Southern Baptist doctrine in the household.
So it's an environment built on just absolute suffocating certainty. And in that kind of mid-century suburban environment, questioning authority isn't just viewed as like a teenager's phase.
Okay.
It's treated as a fundamental disloyalty to the family unit and to God.
Yes.
But for a kid with his intellect, he couldn't turn off his critical thinking. He realized incredibly early on that certainty is where inquiry goes to die. And he started developing this hypersensitive radar for hypocrisy.
He basically reverse engineered the mechanics of authority just by listening to the rhythm of adult speech.
Wait, what do you mean by the rhythm of it?
Well, specifically the cadence of Southern Baptist sermons and corporate suburbanites. He noticed this linguistic pattern. Authority figures would make 3 highly confident declarative statements, leave a pregnant pause, and then deliver a caveat that completely undermined everything they just said.
Wow.
Yeah, he realized that authority announces itself through volume and certainty, but structurally it's entirely hollow. So he was learning the mechanics of comedic timing just by studying the rhythm of everyday lies.
So he's sitting in his bedroom watching Woody Allen and Richard Pryor on television, and he realizes that comedy isn't just entertainment. I mean, for a teenager suffocating in a Houston suburb, comedy is an intellectual survival mechanism.
Right, it's a pressure valve.
Exactly. So he starts slipping one-liners under his older brother Steve's door, looking for any sign that he isn't crazy for seeing through the suburban illusion.
Just looking for validation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And by the time he's 15, he and his friend Dwight Slade are literally sneaking out of their bedroom windows to perform at the Comedy Workshop in downtown Houston.
Which obviously forces a massive collision with his parents. I mean, from their perspective, their teenage son is rejecting their faith, he's sneaking out at night, and exposing himself to this secular, degenerate lifestyle.
Right.
So in 1977, they take him to a psychoanalyst. They want him fixed. They want his rebellion categorized as a psychological defect so it can be treated and cured.
But the psychoanalyst pulls a massive reversal on them.
Oh, it's incredible.
After the first session, the doctor pulls a 16-year-old Bill aside and essentially says, listen, you can keep coming if it gets you out of the house, but it is them, not you.
Which is huge.
We really cannot understate the gravity of that moment. That doctor didn't just give him a clean bill of health. He basically handed him the official clinical permission slip for his rebellion.
Yeah, it validated his core suspicion that the insanity he was witnessing wasn't a defect in his own brain. It was a systemic, manufactured reality happening outside of him.
And externalize the problem.
Exactly. He wasn't sick, the culture was sick.
Yeah.
So Armed with that validation, he graduates high school in 1979 and immediately heads out to Los Angeles.
But that introduces a whole new kind of suffocation.
Right, because L.A. in 1979 is the absolute peak of the comedy boom, centered around the Comedy Store. And the industry isn't looking for profits. They are looking for safe, packageable products to put into sitcoms.
And he actually tries to play the game for a minute, right?
He does. He puts on the clean suits. He writes observational jokes about dating and traffic. He really tries to mold himself into that sitcom-ready product.
But within months, the dissonance just becomes unbearable. Escaping the physical suburbs of Houston didn't solve the problem because he had just walked right into the intellectual suburbs of the comedy industry.
That's a great way to put it.
The artificiality was just wearing a different costume.
So he retreats to Houston in 1983 and completely blows up his style. He forms the Texas Outlaw Comics with Sam Kinison and Ron Schock.
Oh, wow, that's quite a lineup.
Yeah, and they strip away the suits, the safe premises, the desire to be liked by network executives. The performances become raw and physically confrontational. The objective completely shifts from comforting the audience to aggressively waking them up.
But tearing down your own reality like that takes a massive toll.
He does. He starts experimenting with sensory deprivation tanks to isolate his consciousness,
Right.
which rapidly spirals into severe alcohol and cocaine abuse. He is intentionally trying to punch a hole through ordinary reality, but the substances take over. He loses his money, his bookings dry up, and the physical violence escalates to the point where a bartender throws him against a jukebox and shatters his leg.
Man. And this is where we have to look closely at the mechanics of his genius, because it is so easy to romanticize the drug-fueled era of the tortured artist.
Oh, people do it all the time.
Exactly. People look at the defining moment of 1987, the harmonic convergence.
Right.
This was a massive global event, an alignment of 8 planets that the New Age counterculture believed would shift human consciousness. Hicks and his friend Kevin Booth head to a Texas ranch during this convergence and take a heroic dose of psilocybin mushrooms.
A truly heroic dose.
Yeah. And during this trip, Hicks reports an encounter with a non-human intelligence in a conch shell-shaped ship.
Which sounds completely out there.
It does, but this specific experience locked in his defining philosophical premise. The idea that matter is merely energy condensed to a slow vibration and reality is a shared hallucination.
It provided the metaphysical anchor for everything he did afterward. The psychedelics shattered the boundary between his ego and the universe. He realized that the American dream, the consumerism, the religious dogma, the corporate ladders was just a particularly toxic strain of a hallucination that the people in power were forcing everyone else to share.
But here is where I have to look at the timeline and draw a hard line, because the psychedelics absolutely provided him with the architectural blueprint of reality.
Yes.
But the execution of his actual masterpiece required something else entirely. If you look at the work that actually made him a legend, it wasn't written while he was high.
Not at all.
In 1988, he quit drugs and alcohol cold turkey. Absolute sobriety.
Yeah.
He replaced the cocaine with Noam Chomsky, Aldous Huxley, and Terence McKenna. He needed the clarity and the relentless discipline of performing 250 nights a year sober to systematically dismantle the corporate state on stage.
The sobriety gave him the precision. I mean, he never stopped publicly advocating for psychedelics. He consistently argued that governments banned them not because they caused madness, but because they caused clarity.
Right.
They threatened political control systems by making people question authority. But you are spot on. His ability to communicate that threat required a razor-sharp, sober mind. Starting in 1989 with Sane Man, which was recorded in Austin, we see the transition. He is no longer doing stand-up routines. He is executing targeted strikes on the corporate media state.
Let's break down the mechanics of those strikes, because he isn't just getting on stage and ranting. In 1990, he releases Dangerous, and he goes directly after the architects of the false reality.
Oh, the marketing bit.
Yes. He has that infamous bit where he calmly demands that anyone in marketing or advertising kill themselves.
Right.
He calls them Satan's little helpers who are burning down the world and selling us the charcoal. He explicitly tells the audience this is not a joke, there is no punchline. He is using the expectation of comedy to deliver a moral indictment.
And the tension in the room during that bit is structural. He traps the audience. They are waiting for the release of a punchline to let them off the hook, and he just refuses to provide it.
He just leaves them hanging.
Exactly. He forces them to sit in the discomfort of their own complicity in consumer culture. And he used a similar mechanical structure when dissecting the John F. Kennedy assassination on that same album. He described the official Warren Commission report as a fairy tale for adults.
That JFK bit is an absolute masterclass in tension and rhythm. He doesn't just state a conspiracy theory, he turns the audience into a jury.
Yeah.
He references this Zapruder film and he just starts chanting, back and to the left, mimicking the movement of Kennedy's head to prove the fatal shot came from the front.
It's so visceral.
It is.
Yeah.
He is taking one of the darkest traumas in American history, framing it as a blatant hit by the military-industrial complex, and pointing out that the government's official story relies on a magic bullet that defies the laws of physics. And the audience roars with laughter. But it isn't the laughter of traditional comedic release.
No, it's the laughter of collective recognition. It's the catharsis of finally hearing someone state the obvious truth in a public space. He was pointing out that the people who control the narrative also control the language, and they use that language to invert reality.
Yeah.
You see this perfectly in his bit, countering the government narrative of the bad acid trip. He paints a picture of a young man on psychedelics who suddenly realizes the profound interdependence of all living things. A police officer walks up and asks, is he having a bad trip? And Hicks responds, no, officer. He is having a good trip. You are having a bad trip.
He flips the linguistic framing entirely. The cop, who represents state authority and conformity, is the one trapped in a nightmare. The kid on the floor is actually working up.
Exactly.
I've always thought he was essentially an ethnobotanist disguised as a guy in a denim jacket and cowboy boots. He smuggled the radical consciousness expansion of Terence McKenna past the censors using pure chain-smoking Texan attitude.
That is a brilliant way to phrase it.
And it scales up globally in 1991 with Relentless, where he dissects the Gulf War.
Right, and he is doing this material right when domestic yellow ribbon campaigns and patriotic fervor are at an absolute fever pitch.
Yeah.
And he steps on stage and points out the glaring hypocrisy of the United States carpet-bombing a country using weapons that the United States previously sold to them.
Yeah.
He dissects the media's complicity, describing the cable news coverage as a sanitized Nintendo game.
A Nintendo game. Wow.
He pointed out that the media removed the human cost, turning a slaughter into primetime entertainment. He made the audience realize that the enemy wasn't foreign. The enemy was the domestic apparatus controlling the flow of information.
And this all crescendos in November 1992 at the Dominion Theatre in London with the recording of Revelations. He is a massive star in the UK at this point, while still largely ignored by mainstream American institutions.
Yeah, the UK completely got him.
They did. And the finale of Revelations completely discards the format of a comedy show. It is a secular benediction. He delivers the life is just a ride philosophy.
It's so powerful.
In 90 seconds, he condenses high-level Eastern philosophy into accessible language. He tells the audience that reality presents a constant choice between fear and love. The eyes of fear want to put bigger locks on the doors and hoard resources, while the eyes of love see all of humanity as one connected organism.
He had finally synthesized everything. He bypassed the intellect and went straight for the spiritual jugular of the audience.
Yeah.
And right at this moment of absolute clarity, when Channel 4 in the UK is offering him his own television series and magazines are asking him to write columns, the physical decline begins.
Right.
In the spring of 1993, at 31 years old, he is diagnosed with metastatic pancreatic cancer. It has already spread to his liver.
He is given less than a year to live, and he makes a deliberate, calculated decision to keep the diagnosis a secret from the public.
Which takes incredible willpower.
It does,
Yeah.
because he understands how audiences consume information. If they know he is dying, they will filter every word he says through pity. He refuses to let his message be diluted by sympathy. So we get that brutal juxtaposition we talked about earlier. Chemotherapy to this, in Houston on Monday, flying to comedy clubs to perform on Thursday. He's literally writing his final indictments of American culture while his body is shutting down.
Which brings us to the ultimate institutional betrayal on October 1st, 1993.
The Letterman appearance.
Yes, he arrives in New York to tape his 12th appearance on The Late Show with David Letterman. He performs a 24-minute set. He addresses the recent burning of the Branch Davidian compound in Waco, Texas, and he points out the blazing hypocrisy of anti-abortion activists who call themselves pro-life while actively murdering doctors at clinics.
Heavy stuff.
Very heavy, but the performance is razor sharp. Letterman comes over, shakes his hand, and praises him on stage. But later that night, Hicks is sitting in his hotel room, and the phone rings. It's the producers.
Oh, man.
The entire segment has been cut.
Executive producer Robert Morton made the unilateral decision to completely erase a completed, successful performance from the broadcast tape. Why? Because the network Standards and Practices Department flagged it. They determined that jokes about religion and abortion would threaten commercial sponsors. And when the producers ask Hicks if he can come back and do a different, safer set to fill the airtime, he replies with devastating calm. He says, "I do not think I could learn to juggle in that short a time."
It's just such a perfect response.
Yeah.
To understand the mechanics of this censorship, you really have to look at what Standards and Practices actually does.
Yeah.
Their job isn't to protect the moral fabric of society. Their job is to protect the advertising revenue stream.
Exactly.
Hicks had spent a decade arguing that corporate sponsors manufacture a false, sanitized reality to keep consumers docile. And here, in his final months on Earth, the corporate media apparatus perfectly validates his argument by deleting him from existence to protect the feelings of the people selling soap in cars.
It is the empirical proof of his entire life's thesis. By silencing him, CBS proved him right. His response wasn't to apologize or compromise. He sat down and wrote a 39-page handwritten manifesto to New Yorker writer John Lahr. He invokes Shiva the Destroyer. He declares that the job of a true comedian is to be a flame that topples idols, not a court jester entertaining the king.
Wow.
And then he pushes his failing body to do one final live show on January 6, 1994, at Caroline's in New York. The physical strength is just gone. He leans into the wings, looks at his fiancée and says, "Colleen, are you there? I cannot do this anymore."
He returns to his family in Little Rock, Arkansas. On February 14th, he stops speaking entirely. He passes away on February 26, 1994, at 32 years old.
Just 32.
Yeah. His brother Steve reads his final written words at the memorial. He wrote, "I left in love, in laughter, and in truth, and wherever truth, love, and laughter abide, I am there in spirit."
But the immediate aftermath of his death is defined by a deafening silence from the very institutions he tried to wake up. Letterman doesn't mention his death on the air for weeks. The corporate machine just kept grinding forward.
Right. But the underground refused to let the philosophy die.
Yeah.
In 1996, the rock band Tool dedicates their triple platinum album Enema to him. They sample his voice directly into the tracks. Suddenly, millions of disaffected youth who never watched late-night comedy are exposed to a psychedelic gospel.
The ideas bypassed the traditional gatekeepers.
They did. But this survival mechanism quickly morphs into commodification.
Of course it does.
In 1997, Rykodisc releases his posthumous albums Rant in E minor in Arizona Bay. The label generates millions of dollars in revenue from the intellectual property of a man who spent his life identifying corporate profit as the enemy of human truth.
And the reckoning with the censorship took even longer. It wasn't until January 2009 that David Letterman finally addressed it.
Decades later.
Yeah, he invites Mary Hicks, Bill's mother, onto the show. He plays the censored 1993 tape in its entirety on national television. Letterman takes full responsibility. He admits there was absolutely nothing wrong with the material, and he asks out loud what was the matter with him for allowing it to be cut.
And when you watch that tape today, the material is profoundly reasonable. It simply points out logical inconsistencies in extremist behavior. The 2009 broadcast proved that the 1993 controversy was entirely manufactured by an institution projecting its own financial anxieties onto the audience.
Right.
Today, the cultural landscape is overflowing with figures who trace their professional lineage directly to Hicks. Joe Rogan has explicitly stated that Hicks proved comedy could be used as an intellectual weapon. Bill Burr, Doug Stanhope, the entire modern architecture of truth-telling comedy is built on the foundation Hicks poured.
Which forces us to ask a really uncomfortable question. Are modern dangerous comedians actually continuing his legacy, or are they just monetizing the lane he cleared?
That is the question.
Hicks died broke because he fought corporate America and they refused to let him speak. Today's cultural commentators are getting unimaginably rich broadcasting their rebellion on billion-dollar platforms like Spotify and Netflix, platforms sponsored by the exact corporate structures Hicks despised.
The difference is existential. Performing rebellion on a platform that pays you $100 million is fundamentally different from performing rebellion on a network that erases your final words.
Exactly.
We see this tension in how society memorializes him now. In Houston, as of July 2026, the city council is still debating whether to erect a statue of him in Eleanor Tinsley Park. The establishment still isn't sure if he deserves a permanent monument. Yet, in late 2024, a toy company released a Legends of Laughter plastic action figure of him.
It is the ultimate heartbreaking irony. The The man who stood on stage and demanded that marketers kill themselves has been reduced to a plastic doll with audio clips sold to the masses.
Yeah.
His most profound metaphysical quotes, about matter being energy and life being a dream, are now disembodied TikTok captions posted by millions of people who don't even know his name. The philosophy survived, but the corporate machine he fought is the very engine distributing his ideas today.
The machine adapted to him. It figured out how to package his anti-commercialism as a commercial product. But despite that commodification, the core choice he outlined on that London stage remains intact.
Right.
The choice between fear and love doesn't require a platform, it doesn't require a brand deal, and it doesn't require an audience.
Yeah.
It is an internal mechanism available to anyone willing to wake up.
Which leaves you, the listener, with something heavy to consider. Hicks spent his short life warning us that reality is a managed hallucination, offering us a simple, profound choice between fear and love. Yet the institutions around him were so paralyzed by fear that they literally erased a dying man's final words. Now, as you watch his radical thoughts get reduced to plastic action figures and algorithm-driven social media captions, you have to wonder, is this endless commodification the ultimate defeat of his message? Or is it exactly what he meant when he told us not to worry because all of it, even the plastic dolls, the erase tapes, and the corporate machines, is just part of the ride? Thank you for listening to the Golden Gems podcast. We'll be back next time with another deep dive. Until then, keep exploring, keep listening, and keep celebrating the power of uncompromising voices.